FVTT.
Hell yeah.
Developer update. Hi everyone, this is Sebastian from FVTT.io with a quick dev update. The last week was mainly me battling with both Google and Microsoft to get the new extension version listed on their respective stores. So the first news is Microsoft Edge will be supported natively from now on when I be able to list the extension on their store. It is currently under review and I have no experience with how long that will take for Microsoft, and I expect it to be a learning process for both sides, because the first rejection was, hey, this isn't working expected, because they had no Foundry server and nothing. But the good thing is they really look thoroughly at new extensions, so that's good and we will make progress. How slowly it is, I don't know. Google Chrome, on the other side, has certain requirements now established that I need to fulfill, mainly regarding privacy statements about user data, and that's a good thing, so I'm happy to oblige, but still this is a very cumbersome because it is a lengthy process. So I'm positive that we will receive the new version on the Chrome Web Store during the weekends, because the last say was, okay, from our side it looks good, but you need to resubmit because we cannot approve an already rejected extension. So that's about it. That's where we stand. But I want to show you at least what is in store for you once it is released, because there have been plenty of changes on the parser sides. Sourcebook, Monster and Item Parser have received significant updates, bug fixes and improvements to make a smoother import. The extension too. And let's see some of the new updates that you will be seeing. The first thing is, I stated that in the last video that I switched to Manifest version 3, which is, in very short words, the new way Google thinks extensions should be written when running in a browser environment. The Firefox team does not necessarily accept or find all these changes very good. So the Firefox team does not support Manifest version 3 right now, and they said or stated in one of the pages that I found that they will accept or try to accept submissions for version 3 beginning next year. So that's about how far out the Firefox extension really is, because version 3 was initiated to tackle this reload bug. When connecting the extension to Foundry, the Foundry tab was reloaded, and I really reworked everything, because the way extensions are working significantly changed from a coding standpoint. So instead of having one large background script, you now employ a service worker which is just running when needed. And this when needed indicates that you do not have a global scope, but sometimes the data will just vanish to exist, and you need to make sure that every data you need will be stored in some kind of storage and you need to access it. So I want to keep it short. It's very different from the way we wrote extension with Manifest version 2. Some of these changes are really good. So because the service worker is put to sleep when not needed, will put less strain on your own computer when not using the extension. So all in all, Chrome is a resource hog, and if that will help us to limit the resources needed to just use a browser, that is a beneficial change. So let's go forward to Manifest version 3, even if that means if the Firefox extension version is put into the future. So let's load the unpacked extension to show some of the changes that you will be facing when you first install the extension. The user interface, and I will pin it to the bar right now to have it more readily available, is a bit different from the version that you are used to have. You can clearly see that no user has connected. The environment you're using, so are you targeting the production parsers or the parsers running on the staging environment, which is more for developers and not for regular users. You can see that over here. We will come to that in a second. You can see that Foundry has connected successfully. This button is now green, and if you can go to another tab and click this green button, you will be brought back to the Foundry tab. And for example, if we are over here on this tab and use that, it will be brought to the front in the respective browser window. So that's a nice quality of life change. You can see that there's a button now, it's called batch, and it's grayed out and disabled because no batch is running. But when a batch is running, you can use this button to cancel the currently running batch if you just made a mistake and importing all of Tomb of Annihilation in your Lost Mines of Fandelver world, for example. So this is more easy to access. There was this cancel button on the D&D Beyond page in the header when batch import was running, but it was really finicky to press that button before the page reloaded, so I decided to move it into the pop-up. You see that the lower bar has no menu any longer. It contained this cancel batch button too, really small and not very noticeable, and an options page. And the options page went into the extensions management. You can see that on the details and that extension options, and it's very, very small right now. The options page contained the ability to choose which parser environment to use, staging or production. And again, production is mainly targeted for regular users. But here, all you can do now, you can now choose how much logging do you want. And if you say, okay, I want debug logging, then your console log, which is accessible by pressing F12, will be really swamped with debug messages. This will help me to pinpoint issues if we do a screen share. If you are happy with just warnings, that's fine for you as a regular user. You can switch them off in the extension options now too. So this is something that came into play in the latest edition. So other than switching parser environments, and I'll show you now how to do that, this options panel was rendered useless. So I thought it would be better to have it not on the regular pop-up UI to save a bit of screen estate, but to place it here. Okay, let's look at parser environments. As I said before, there are two, the production and the staging environment. The production environment is mainly reachable by vtta.io, and the staging environment is reachable by vtta.dev. So we got two homepages, for example, vtta.io and the same exact thing on vtta.dev. This is mainly for me when I do changes on either component of all the VTTA tools and all the servers. I upload them, I test them first locally, and then put them on the staging environment. And I just point my tools to use the staging environment, and if everything is working there, I'm pretty confident that it's working in production too, because architecturally they are the same. The production environment is scaled a little bit bigger, so 4 nodes, really beefy ones, versus 3 nodes, very thin ones, Kubernetes-wise. But they are both Kubernetes clusters. They do have both a MongoDB database exclusively used for those. And if you want to change or set your environment you use, and again, as a regular user, you use vtta.io. So let's do that first. You go to vtta.io, go to your user profile and connect the extension. And that says, I'm now using production. Cool. And if you're curious, and we will talk about that in a later video and some other video, you go to the vtta.dev website and look at your profile there and connect your profile to the extension. And you see now you're using dev. So when I'm importing stuff under dev, the dev parsers will be used to translate a monster's HTML into a Foundry VTT monster, or basically everything. And I will be using this for the demo, but again, you will probably use the regular.io. And if you refresh that here, you can see how easy it is to switch really the environments used. Again, we will use the staging environment, the vtta.dev right now. That's it. You can see that the user is connected. We've got a grayed out badge. We've got this Foundry icon. Everything is explained. Something that I missed, and I will just reload it real quick to show you that. So let's remove the extension and let's reload it. So we start really fresh with no data, no user connected. you can see that I put more information into the pop-up. Now, this is not a Foundry server. This has been very clear message and put out there before, but there's no user connected. And it really describes what does it mean. And it links the Getting Started guide, which is rather new, and the privacy policy. So you can actually see what kind of user is stored about you and why do I need those information before you create an account. And that's something that Google required. I haven't seen these requirements fulfilled by any other extension that I'm using, but I'm gladly submitting this request because I think you should be knowing what kind of data is stored about you, because you should be responsible for that decision. Do I want that or not? So I'm pretty open about that. You saw that in your profile page all along, but as I said, after creating an account. And to make a certain decision, do I want to create an account? It's better to have that information beforehand. So that's about how the pop-up menu is now looking. You can see you get more information about the connection. So what's your Foundry version? What's your D&D version? What's your world? That will help you to avoid importing stuff into the wrong world, for example. Other than that, you can see that the integration says, hey, you're successfully connecting the extension, but there's no user set. So you're really pushed. You need a user to download images. That's the gist of it. If you want to download images, you either employ your own image proxy or use the FVTT proxy, but then you will need a user. That's the rundown. So let's look at the other user interface changes that I implemented, and those are related mainly to batch imports. So when we start an import, and let's reload that page because the context of the extension changed because of removing and re-editing, and let's start this import, and now you can see already that there's a screen that says bring both tabs next to each other, or at least both into the foreground. It's perfectly fine if you want to move Foundry to a very left, nearly visible, but it should be in the foreground because only then Chrome dedicates enough resources to this tab to, for example, on the Foundry side, upload images and create tokens and create actors or update them or scenes or magic items or all that stuff. And on the D&D Beyond side, you need it in the foreground because it will collect the HTML and send it over to the parser, evaluating the response and forwarding it to Foundry. So a lot of communication is happening on both tabs. And if you send one of those into the background, you will definitely have a bad time. Because if you send it Foundry, for example, to the background, the D&D Beyond pages waits forever until Foundry has scraped enough resources to process the entities and signals back, okay, I'm finally done, so it can continue. And that's the most important thing that you should remember. Have both pages in the foreground. And now this is more visible. So you can always see outdated or missing entities or up-to-date entities. So we are pretty good in that regard over here. And let's just restart this import to continue a look about the user interface. Now you get 10 seconds to abort batch. And this is true for list imports, like from the monster list, for example, or from adventure sourcebook module imports. After that, everything is rather the same, but you can see that the batch importer is more verbose. It will say exactly what is going on and what you should do. And it will really clearly state, okay, I got an error, for example, if you're importing all monsters that are available to you. In the past, the parser broke and said, okay, this something happened, and I'll come to that at the end of the video because it will be technical. And then the batch import stopped at all. Now you will get, when, for example, importing monster lists, you get error indicator, hey, this monster failed to pass from the list, but I will retry that at the end. When I finished the complete list, I'll just retry this single monster for you. And it will collect all these failed monsters and put them on the end of the queue. But the changes that I did after I implemented this, nearly eliminated the errors. So well, let's talk about it now, technical. It's not that the parser is failing. It was, or it is the error that the parser does not receive the HTML to really examine at all. So the error is really at the main entry gate of all the infrastructure, and that is the Nginx ingress route. It receives everything and decides which part of the whole infrastructure should receive that. And if it's a monster HTML code, the monster parser receives it. If it's a spell HTML part, the spell parser should receive it. Or if it's a page of a source book, then the source book parser should receive it. And I can see in the monster parser that everything is fine. No crashes, no error logs at all. It just did not receive the HTML at all. So it is a malfunction communication between the ingress route, responsible for routing the HTML code to respective parsers, and the parser entity itself. And I'm evaluating what is happening. I'm working around the issue right now, just retrying it. So if the monster parser, for example, sends the error code, then we'll just retry 3 times, and one of the 3 will succeed. This is not happening all the time for all monsters, but rarely. But it's really annoying. I imported all 97 pages of monsters, and roughly 10 of those almost 2,000 monsters were erroneous, and it was totally erratical. So I don't know what kind of request there is, but at some point in time it just failed. But with this workaround in place, retried if necessary, I got no errors at all. So it's really stable, and I'm pretty glad that it is working right now and that I have time to really investigate and learn more about Kubernetes. Why is it happening? Why does the HTML code, why does the ingress route think the monster parser is not available? That's a homework for tomorrow or next week. Because, well, next week we got plenty of good news for this video, because I was getting a raised hand from someone that I really look forward to talk to, because she said, hey, I'm experienced in organizing things. Because now with these changes in Q, just waiting for the new Chrome extension available on the Chrome Web Store, we do have plenty of time to really look at how do we want to coordinate combined effort to make the adventure modules more better, more supported in terms of scenes and place monsters and place everything. And I'm really looking forward to this discussion, because I do have some ideas, but someone from a background with organizing stuff all the time, that's probably a great person to talk to. So that's the road ahead. I think the parsers and everything right now are in a good shape. So we can continue. Extension is in good shape. We can continue. And so let's continue. With that, good night.